Story 1. Meet the Spartans. I could feel my intelligence quotient dropping during the 20 minutes I watched. I do not have that many intelligence quotient points I can afford to lose. Story 2. Cats 2019. I still have nightmares about those unsettling human-cat hybrids. I watched it with my sister on opening night, and we both just sat there in horrified silence. Even the popcorn tasted like regret. Story 3. Birdemic, Shock and Terror. My roommate and I watched it for our bad movie night tradition. The computer-generated imagery birds looked like they were made in Microsoft Paint, and the acting was worse than my middle school drama class. We could not even enjoy it ironically. Story 4. Live-action Avatar movie. As someone who loved the show as a kid, I still struggle to forgive M. Night Shyamalan for subjecting the world to that. Story 5. The new Snow White. You know it is bad when your 6-year-old asks you several times during the film if it is over yet and when you can leave. Story 6. I adore science fiction, especially when it revolves around space. However, even with what should be a free pass, Rebel Moon was so bad I could not finish it. Just dreadful. Story 7. That one they play at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints Visitor Centers. I went there because my friend wanted me to. Story 8. I have seen many classic bad movies, not in the theater but through riff tracks and similar sources. The one that least qualifies as a movie, and where ticket buyers have the strongest case for a class action suit, is probably Fun in Balloonland. It is a started but essentially abandoned bad idea for a movie with no discernible plot, mostly parade footage, and ends in less than an hour. It is completely intolerable without the riff tracks commentary. Story 9. Tank Girl. I have watched a lot of bad movies, and I love a good bad movie, but Tank Girl, everything about it rubbed me the wrong way. I would watch a Sharknado marathon rather than watch Tank Girl again. Story 10. Holmes and Watson, the 2018 movie starring Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly, is literally the only movie I have ever walked out of and asked for a refund from the theater. The movie is only an hour and a half long, and my wife and I couldn't endure it. It was bad. So bad. Not even so bad it becomes good, or so dumb it's kind of funny. No, it was just straight awful. I've seen Dragon Ball Evolution. I've seen M. Night Shyamalan's The Last Airbender. I've seen both Dumb and Dumber, When Harry Met Lloyd, and Dumb and Dumber 2. All of those movies were preferable to Holmes and Watson. Story 11. Lepa Sila Lepo Gore, also known as Beautiful Villages Burn Beautifully. I hated it with every fiber of my being. Parents recommended I watch it for cultural reasons and other purposes. Story 12. Lamageddon. I thought it was going to be a funny bad spoof like Velocipaster. My wife and I quit watching after 20 minutes because it was still focused on some losers at home. Story 13. I feel as though there was an Eddie Murphy vampire movie a long time ago. We walked out before it was even halfway through. Story 14. Sound of Thunder was very disappointing. I have never been so close to walking out of a theater. I kept hoping that something would redeem at least a small part, but it did not. Story 15. Freddy Got Fingered. One of only 2 times, the other being Deuce Bigalow, European Gigolo, where I wondered why I paid to see this. Story 16. Alien vs. Predator. Requiem had the worst ending, but I think the platform might be the worst I can think of right now. Story 17. Cool World was a really bad movie. I watched it in theaters and nearly walked out. I watched it again twice, thinking surely it was not as bad as I remembered, but it was. Story 18. The latest Mission Impossible movie was over the top and boring. Even my 15-year-old wanted to leave early. At least I got the tickets for free. Story 19. I watched a Serbian film and Rubber on the same day. It is a toss-up. A Serbian film made me feel like my soul needed a good scrubbing. Rubber was idiotic to the point of making me feel like my brain was scooped out with a melon baller. Story 20. Recently, Fall Guy. A full lobotomy popcorn film with zero story, awful script, pantomime acting, and bad casting. I couldn't escape. Story 21. The Nut Job, released in 2014. After checking its release year, I am surprised to learn that it received a sequel. Story 22, Hold the Dark, was the most pointless, pretentious movie ever made, just praising its own intellectuality. Story 23, The Box, you press the button and someone dies, except it is an alien experiment to see if humans are worthy. The whole movie was awful. I watched it with a friend, and once it ended, we both simultaneously said, "That was the worst movie I have ever seen." Story 24, Red Surf, starring a very young George Clooney. A surfer enjoys life with drug money together with his gang in 1980s California. His girlfriend is pregnant and does not want to live in a house with drugs and guns. Story 25, 2025. The world enslaved by a virus. Every possible mistake made in any movie is present in this film, and it somehow manages to fail even more severely. There are no redeeming qualities about this movie. It is that bad, not in a humorous way, but in a manner that fits every negative description a movie can have. This film is 90 minutes of the worst Christian and Jesus propaganda combined with everything else wrong with the movie. It is so bad that it is available for free on YouTube, and even they do not want to remove it on grounds of copyright infringement. Story 26. My answer to this will always be Gods of Egypt. I got it free from Redbox and still stopped it and returned it halfway through. Story 27. The Turning, 2020, starring Finn Wolfhard. I was curious about this movie because it was released around the same time as The Haunting of Bly Manor, which was based on the same book. I was also a fan of Stranger Things, so I had high expectations. That was very disappointing. I had never been so confused when the credits rolled. I'm going to spoil it, but the movie has a fake ending where the protagonist and the children get in the car and escape the haunted house. Then time suddenly rewinds to a point about 2/3 of the way through the film, but it was so poorly done that it seemed like the editor accidentally spliced the wrong scenes together. The entire final act never happened, and now the protagonist goes to visit her mom. She suddenly starts to scream. Roll credits. Story 28. Sinbad, The Fifth Voyage was possibly the most hilariously bad movie I have seen so far, and that says a lot coming from someone who has seen The Room and a Minecraft movie as well. Story 29. Limiting to films I actually saw in the theater. Cyborg, an early Jean-Claude Van Damme movie. I wanted to see UHF, but my friends insisted on seeing it instead. I have never recovered. Story 30. Ones I shut off. Hostel, The Matrix Reloaded, The Blob, 1958, 50 Shades of Grey. Ones I kept watching. Into the Storm, those two idiots cracked me up. Special effects were not awful. Acting was. Mother, and yes, I know it is an allegory, Mac and me had to watch because of the kids. Story 31. Myra Breckenridge. Horrifyingly awful, which was a shame, as the novel was great. How did they mess it up so badly? Story 32. Gladiator 2. Terrible. Everything felt rushed, the characters were bad, the computer-generated imagery was poor, and it tried too hard to copy Gladiator. Story 33. Highlander 2. I am sure there are worse films, but I have not seen them. Highlander 2 might be the worst sequel ever made as well. Story 34. I watched this movie set during a land-stealing event in the United States of America, and it had Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise in it. It was so bad that Cole Meany could not save it. Story 35. As far as low-budget schlock goes, Terror Toons was pretty horrendous. As far as movies with some actual marketing, Master of Disguise was terrible. Story 36. This is the worst movie ever and it is not even close. Thou shalt not kill except. Story 37. Maybe not the very worst, but the most recent bad movie I watched was Rest in Peace Department, starring Ryan Reynolds and Jeff Bridges. I watched it with my wife, her choice because she likes Ryan Reynolds, and we mocked the whole premise and huge plot loopholes the entire time. When it was over, she said, "Well, at least they didn't make a sequel." Guess what? She was right, but only technically. Rest in Peace Department 2, Rise of the Damned was a prequel. Story 38. I won't say any films had limitations that made them awful because sometimes they really can't help it, but I recently came across Surfer Dude on Tubi, and it has to be among the worst movies even though Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson are in it. Story 39. Thanksgiving 3. I did not even make it 10 minutes in. To this day, It is the only movie I have ever stopped watching after it started. Story 40. That Netflix original movie where the African-American family moves into a Victorian-looking mansion and their son finds a ghost in the attic. The ghost is played by the police officer from Stranger Things. Story 41. The movie with Benedict Cumberbatch and Kirsten Dunst is Hair of the Dog or something like that. It is about a cowboy who gets poisoned with cow anthrax. I am not great at paying attention to movies, but when that one was over, I looked at my husband and we both said, "What the heck?" I still don't understand how that was nominated for an Academy Award. Story 42. Family Switch. Absolute nonsense, trite, and sloppy content that I really should not pay attention to. But come on. Children deserve better than constant fart jokes and gross-out humor. Also, the whole incest joke is disgusting. Story 43. Certainly not the worst film I have ever seen in general, but the worst film I have ever seen that won an Academy Award was Moonstruck. Story 44. Some moderate subculture film that I will not name because, in all fairness, they were semi-professionals or amateurs doing their best, and they loved the culture too much to be disrespected here. It was capital S shite though. Story 45. It is not actually the worst. The worst I have seen is probably Cats. However, I would like to mention Valerian. It was definitely the biggest letdown to me because it could have been so cool. At least the visuals were stunning, but the two leads were miserable to watch together. Story 46. At the moment of viewing, I can think of Suicide Squad and Batman vs. Superman, both from 2016. In retrospect, there are many. Cannot think of one right now. Mostly movies that I liked as a kid. Story 47. That live musical with the large British man called Cats. I was there that day to see Jumanji with my cousin, but the tickets were sold out, so we settled for Cats. It was poor millennial-targeted humor and some strange sexual remarks about cats. All the while, they started singing without letting any plot develop. It scared me for life. I went home to my cats and checked if a large British man was inside them. Story 48. I am not a bad film aficionado, but I have seen a couple of bad films deliberately so that I could enjoy their badness. The winner there is Plan 9 from Outer Space, which is spectacularly inept. A close second would be Killer Clowns from Outer Space. I saw Santa Claus Conquers the Martians on television when I was a child, and even my low standards were not met. When it comes to watching in a movie theater, the worst film I ever saw deliberately, expecting to enjoy myself, was Mission to Mars, which has laughably bad dialogue, weak acting, and terrible everything else. Story 49. Street Fighter. 1994. Yes, the one with Jean-Claude Van Damme and Raul Julia. It has been my benchmark for bad movies since then. Story 50. Nomadland. My wife fell asleep 30 minutes in, and the next day she asked what happened in the movie. I said absolutely nothing happened other than she used a bucket. Story 51. Death Train. A young Hugh Grant and Malcolm McDowell. Every time McDowell is in the story, it slows down, guessing he was the expensive actor and they wanted their money's worth. Many shots of a moving train are used to extend the runtime. Bad. Story 52. Jungle Book 2 is atrocious, even worse considering that Jungle Book is one of the best films ever made. Story 53. Our Drawings by Kolobai Productions. An absolute fever dream. To give you an example, the film has 3 prologues that explain the main character's backstory, and they all contradict each other. Overall, the whole movie feels like a bunch of out-of-context clips merged together. Story 54. I hated 7 pounds. I nearly walked out and shouted at the screen when it ended. It made suicide seem like a beautiful thing, suggesting the world would be better if you died, which is harmful and wrong. Story 55. Grandma's Boy. If somebody actually finds that funny, I don't want to know you. You're not my people. Story 56. Disaster Movie. Barely a disaster movie parody, just whatever movie had a trailer shown in 2008 that the writers could reference with a quick dated joke mixed in. Story 57. 2 films spring to mind: Shutter Island and The Emoji Movie. For The Emoji Movie, I was working at the time, and thankfully that meant I did not pay. I was, however, literally the only person watching in the cinema. The 2 autistic boys, as well as the other support worker, all fell asleep, and we were the only people in the cinema. Story 58. Breakfast at Tiffany's. Watched it because my wife wanted to. Oh my God. It veers between blatant racism and complete boredom. Story 59. Any Christopher Nolan film. I feel like I am in an alternate reality, watching a completely different movie from everyone else. I hate everything about them. Story 60. Cooties and Brittany Runs a Marathon both had great premises that unfortunately failed in every way. Cooties is slightly sadder because it wasted an incredible cast. Story 61. Enter the Void. It is the worst film I have ever watched. Supposedly based on the Tibetan Book of the Dead and also about dimethyltryptamine, it was supposed to have groundbreaking visuals. Being based on the Book of the Dead is what drew my attention. The movie is terrible. I have watched it 6 times hoping to find some deeper meaning. There is none. It appears deep on a very shallow level, but it is not. The best part is the introductory sequence with intense music and flashing lights featuring bold, flashy fonts. Story 62, 2001. A Space Odyssey ranks very high for me. I know many people loved it for its groundbreaking visuals at the time, but the ambient sound is excruciating, and long spans of nothing happening were boring. There was also a movie called Best in Show, a comedy about dog shows. It is the only movie my whole family has walked out of in a theater because we all disliked it that much. The Mad Max remake or sequel, whichever it was supposed to be, I hated. The whole thing struck me as a product of brain rot. Prometheus has been out for about 15 years, and I could still write a dissertation on how terrible this movie was in its story. Some impressive graphics do not make up for that. Story 63. 40 Days and 40 Nights. The man has to apologize for being sexually assaulted. I also turned off Miami Vice and John Carter after 10 to 20 minutes. The former because it was very boring, the latter because I cannot support a Confederate soldier. Story 64. Skinamarink took up valuable, limited space in theaters that much better independent horror films could have used. It was deceptively marketed and promoted as a more straightforward horror film, but in reality, it was an experimental art school movie based on a short film. Story 65. The hype-to-quality ratio for that movie was atrocious. So many unrealistic events even for a Batman film. His suit was literally bulletproof, explosion-proof, and Batman is apparently concussion-proof. Also, they used the wrong villain. The whole society monologue about the rich would have been better suited for the villain called Anarchy, as in the character that supports anarchism. The Riddler was way too annoying, even if it was intended. I hated watching that movie. There is more that I disliked about the movie, but that will be enough for now. Story 66. Anything by Sacha Baron Cohen, including Borat, The Dictator, and Bruno. However, when he does not show his face, such as voiceovers in animation, he is not bad. Story 67. Dumb and Dumber. I know you were supposed to laugh at idiots, but it is just sad and cringe. At the end, I thought to myself, I could have left an hour ago. Story 68. The worst movie I have seen recently was Friendship. I have seen several children's movies recently, including Minecraft and Dogman. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.